I don't think I have ever read a book like this that has made me feel like this. That also counts for the thumbnails. But that's how I feel. That's how this book made me feel. This is Mortal Follies by Alexis Hall. My boyfriend, my best friend, and I took a little day trip up to Sleepy Hollow, New York. Fantastic autumn getaway just outside of the city. Got pumpkin patches, they got spooky stuff, they got walkable little village with good, food and coffee and all that. But they also have a bookstore. And if I'm ever in a little village, in a little town, I'm gonna sweep out the metaphysical witchy store and the bookstore. And so we did. We found the bookstore, and I wasn't really planning to buy anything. Money is tight nowadays, and I have so many books, and for the books that I'm not keen on owning physically, I have the Kindle app on my iPad. So it's we have so many books. We're thinking about moving, and the thought of moving all those books gives me agita. So I'm I don't need to add more to it. I don't know what it was about this book. I think maybe my best friend is really into book talk in a way that I'm not, and is really up on the the books people are excited about. And I feel maybe she told me about this book and said that people really loving it. Or maybe I was just drawn to the cover because, hello? This is the most, every time I picked it up, I felt whimsical, I felt magical, I felt beautiful. I don't know what it is about these color combinations, this teal and all these pinks, obviously these two ladies making out. I was so drawn to it. And then when I read the back, I was done for. Do you want me to read you the back? Let me read you the back. It is the year 1814, and life for a young lady of good breeding has many difficulties. You know what? I'm going to bring this up we're going to do ASMR. Ready? It is the year 1814, and life for a young lady of good breeding has many difficulties. There are balls to attend, fashions to follow, marriages to consider, and of course, the tiny complication of existing in a world swarming with fairy spirits, interfering deities, and actual straight-up sorcerers. Miss Maylies Mitchellmore finds her entry into high society hindered by an irritating curse. It begins innocuously enough, with her dress slowly unmaking itself over the course of an evening at a high-profile ball, a scandal she narrowly manages to escape. However, as the curse progresses to more fatal proportions, Miss Mitchellmore must seek out aid, even if that means mixing with undesirable company. And there are few less desirable than Lady Georgiana Landrake, a brooding, alluring young woman sardonically nicknamed the Duke of Annandale, who may or may not have murdered her father and brothers to inherit their fortune. If one is to believe the gossip, she might be some kind of malign enchantress. Then again, a malign enchantress might be exactly what Miss Mitchellmore needs. With the Duke's help, Miss Mitchellmore delves into a world of angry gods and vindictive magic, keen to unmask the perpetrator of these otherworldly attacks. But Miss Mitchellmore's reputation is not the only thing at risk in spending time with her new ally, for the reputed witch has her own secrets that may prove dangerous to Miss Mitchellmore's heart, not to mention her life. Okay, I read that and I said, sign me the fuck up. You got witchcraft, magic, lesbians, fairies. 1800s, so it's in a different time period. That's really all I needed, right? Okay, so I pick it up. I'm you know what? I haven't read a physical book in a minute. I've been reading a lot of smut, and just whatever I come across on my Kindle Unlimited. I wanted to read a good physical book. I cannot remember the last time that I didn't want to, this half of the book took me forever to finish because I didn't want it to be done. I didn't want it to finish. I became so attached to this book, and genuinely, again, I can't remember the last time that I have read a book where I was fully immersed and taken out of my everyday life when I was reading it. Like when I finished it, I had the, I had the book blues, I guess you could call them. Like I was like, what do I do now that this is done? Because especially because it's not a series. So like it's not even like I can get my fix by reading the next book, because it's the book, but also the author. Oh, this author, the way that she writes, I was taken. It actually reminds me a lot of a book that I read called The Gentlewoman's Guide to, oh frick, what is that called? The League of Gentlewomen Witches. Good God. The League of Gentlewomen Witches by India Holton. That is what this writing style reminds me of. It's this like whimsical, very like, it almost gives a little bit like like Lady Whistledown in Bridgerton, like dear reader, and like like flouncy, whimsical, silly words. There were so many words in this that was like $2 words that I had to genuinely look up to be like, what does this mean? Which I love personally. I love expanding my vocabulary. I've always had a big vocabulary ever since I was little because I've always loved to read, and I love coming across a word that I'm like, what the hell does that mean? And looking it up. So what I loved the most about this book was the third person narrator. I feel like I haven't read a book with a third person narrator in a long time, maybe since that book, The League of Gentlewomen Witches, because so many books are inner monologue. So many, especially like smut books, fantasy books, romance books, are all inner monologue, which helps those kinds of stories because you want to know what the person is feeling when there's like romance afoot, like you want to know what the person is feeling inside, like, and a narrator can only know so much, but according to my boyfriend, there's only a couple of authors that can do first person narration correctly. Carter, can you hear me? Carter. He's playing Overwatch. Doesn't matter. Anyway, so in this book, it's third person. And it's told, the third person isn't some omnipresent narrator. It is a hobgoblin, like fairy sprite-esque character who their job is to collect stories, and so they go around like finding interesting situations and collecting those stories, and they would have to bring them to their lord, and that's how like they paid for life, I suppose. Like that, there's not a lot about the narrator character. Like we don't get a ton of lore from them, but like it seems that they answer to a lord, and the lord is like, if you want to pay me for whatever he does for the hobgoblin, you have to collect stories for me. That is your payment. That's how you pay for things. I don't know. But so this little narrator character would go around looking for interesting stories that mortals are weaving just by living their lives. And so he comes across the lead character, Miss Mitchellmore, because he's at a ball and he sees her with her dress unraveling and is like, I want to see where this is going. And then goes, this is the story that I have to follow. This is the story that I am going to pay my lord. And just his voice, I'm saying he, there's no gender for the narrator character, but the hobgoblin character, his voice is so funny. He's very sardonic, he's very sarcastic, but there's times where he's like he's a bit warm and feels for these characters, even though he says like it's not typical of his kind to care for these characters, for these humans. Anyway, I just loved the voice of the narrator. It was so whimsical. It was so funny and silly. Let me find a little excerpt to read to you. One thing that's also really cool about the narrator character is because he is so involved in the story instead of being omnipresent. The way that he explains how he follows them around to to be able to tell the story. Like he's able to transform into shadows and a mist over the grass, or he can turn into a little gnat, or he can turn into like a piece of fluff atop a wig, you know? So it's very imaginative. So let me read you just the first couple of paragraphs from the beginning of the book. When Miss Mitchellmore arrived at Lady Etheridge's ball, she was resplendent in a gown of silver French gauze over a silken slip, her hair styled à la grecque and decorated with roses. She caught even my eye, and I sometimes find it a little tricky to tell mortals apart, which, I'll admit, may have caused the tiniest bit of problems in the past. For much of the evening, I watched her from across the room while an elderly colonel opined to me at length regarding the French emperor. It was not, as you may imagine, a topic about which I cared in the slightest. See above regarding my difficulty distinguishing mortals from one another, even short Corsicans. Eventually, I extricated myself from the conversation by enchanting him with a slight but persistent itching between the shoulder blades. Thus freed, I found myself following the pretty little Miss Mitchellmore. I am, amongst other things, a collector of stories, and my instincts told me that she was either the kind of lady who did interesting things, or the kind to whom interesting things happened, or, at a pinch, the kind to whom they could be made to happen. I am not above interfering in mortal affairs, if it seems truly necessary, or if it would be mildly entertaining. I love the writing style. That's like not even a good excerpt. This is my first book review, guys. Be nice to me. The next time I read a book that I'm like, oh, I will make sure to take notes. I took one note, and by took one note, I mean I made sure to put a little post-it note to be like, remember this. I'm gonna try to like talk about it without spoiling too much. I'll do like light spoilers if necessary, but if you're not interested in even light spoilers, log off and come back when you're done. But like I said, I'll try to avoid it. But there's like a main plot in the beginning, of which they mention in the back of the book, so I can mention it. Miss Mitchellmore has a curse upon her, which causes her a lot of grief. Every time she is out in public, something happens to her that everyone in the ton is noticing it. So it's not even like she can conceal it or anything. It's like happening in public, and so her and her best friend and her cousin are trying to figure out how to belay this curse, how to figure out who said it. They can't like figure out who would have anything against this Miss Mitchellmore, because she's like a good and proper and well-behaved gentlewoman. So there's a big, the largest chunk of the book is them trying to figure out how to lift this curse, and who put it on her, and the as mentioned in the back of the book, the Duke of Annandale, the alluring Lady Georgiana, she has some dealings in witchcraft and the old gods and the fairies and stuff, like, so she knows about that world. She's been in that world, so she has some good advice to give them, so they keep like finding their way back to her and keep asking her for help. But like, of course, Miss Mitchellmore and her seem drawn together. There's so much delicious flirting. But anyway, so what I was going to say is the first, like, over half of the book is about that plot point, but then it gets cleared up. And when that got cleared up, I was like, well, there was probably like this much book left, if maybe a little bit more. And I was like, well, now what? Is it just going to be about these ladies' love story? Like, that's great. But also, like, I was so enthralled and so taken with the first part of the book, and like all the drama and twists and turns that it was taking. It was so interesting that I was like, well, what the heck? She let you, this author built you up, solved it, let you come down, relax for a little bit, and then brought it back up, and you're like, oh my god, now this? Like, I couldn't believe that there were two big plot points in one book that are separate from each other. Like, the first thing that happens in the first over half of the book is solved. Like, it's not like it comes back. In a sense it does, but like, it's not like it's the same curse or anything like that. It's just like, I was so taken with this author's storytelling of like ending the plot that you came into the book with halfway through the book, and then taking up a whole nother plot point and problem to be solved towards the end of the book, and having it be so jolly and whimsical and joyful the whole way through. And also let me say that the handling of the romance was so good. And as someone that loves a good smut book, has read some filthy, filthy, filthy things in her life, in her reading days, it is so nice to read a book that has no like overtly descriptive scenes of sex. When they are intimate, because it's told from a, like a narrator that's watching and isn't omnipresent, it's not lurid, it's not descriptive, it's not raw, it's not real. It's more like the little hobgoblin that's watching is just like explaining it the best that he can, and also is like, I'm not going to get into it. Like, but the way it's described is so tasteful and romantic and steamy at the same time. But honestly, even the lead up to any sort of sexual things happening, just their like banter, just the lines that they have in this book of that they speak to each other. Like I said, I thought I would be like desensitized from anything that isn't like the crass like rawness of smut books, but it had me giggling and kicking my feet. Oh, I remember I was like, why did I put a post-it note here? And it was because I really enjoyed the handling of their love story. I'm going to try to figure out how to say this again without any spoilers, but something traumatic had just happened to our lead character. And we find we find her and the love interest, Lady Georgiana, in forced proximity. And our main character, Miss Mitchellmore, is like shaken up. She's traumatized. She's freaked out about the thing that just happened. And they're in the forced proximity, and Miss Mitchellmore wants it. Like, she's going for it. She's like, why won't you do anything? Like, why won't you make a move? Like, please, I'm begging you. And Lady Georgiana, who is the more experienced sapphic of the two of them, and in fact, the only experienced of the two of them, is saying like, you less than 3 hours ago, something terrible happened to you. And you had to do some terrible things. And I say, I'm not denying you or belittling you when I say that whatever you are feeling right now, even if it is real, is hopelessly entangled with fear and guilt, and perhaps a little of the excitement that always comes with danger. And that is not how I want you if we are ever together. And I really enjoyed that and really respected that, because a lot of times whenever you read romance books or fantasy romance books or any of these books, whenever something traumatic happens and like everyone's like feelings are like their their adrenaline and all of that is like at an all-time high, someone's going to take advantage of it, and they're going to make out, they're going to have sex, they're going to do whatever. Like, it just was like really nice, and something I'm not used to seeing, to have the person that the love interest is looking to be with, to have sex with, come at them and be like, take me, and be like, no, sorry, you are feeling traumatized right now. You are not in the right headspace, and I don't want to take advantage of you like that. What a gentlewoman. Do you know what I mean? I was really taken with that. But like I said, like some of the things that they were saying to each other in like their flirting pages. Anyway, I've yapped for long enough. I've never done a book review before. I don't know if I said enough. I don't know if I said too much. But I hope you read this. If you like romantasy, but you like a little bit of more like realism as well, like this is like, obviously they're living in a world where Napoleon is real, and you know, it's like a Bridgerton-esque thing where they're like living in a world that is from history, but also has like a little bit of like spice, a little bit of whimsy, a little bit of magic. And if you like magic, if you like whimsy, if you like romanticy, if you like sapphic love stories, and just like good writing. And again, like, I mean, you guys can tell me if you've read this, if you do read it, and come back and tell me, like, if I'm in the wrong. I'm going to have Carter read this. I think he's going to really like it too. But if I'm in the wrong and thinking that this is like fantastic writing style, and maybe I'm just thinking that because all I have read is like self-published smut books for the longest time. And so maybe I'm just like, whoa, this is fantastic writing. But I don't think I am, because I've been reading for a long, long, long time. I'm a huge, huge reader. And I know when it's a book that's like pretty good, like this ACOTAR can't hold a flame to this, okay? I don't think Sarah J. Maas is the worst writer in the world. She's definitely not the best. But like when you read a book like that, you're like, okay, yeah, this is engaging. I like the story. I like the plot. I like the characters. Like, yeah, I'm into it. I like the lore. I like the world building. But it's not, it's like the writing isn't what keeps you engaged. You know, it's the story, it's the characters, maybe it's the dialogue. It's just like this, am I making sense? The writing, the way that she wrote this book is like what really reels you in and keeps you there. And then you fall in love with the characters, and then you root for them, and then you're worried for them. And I'm just, I can't wait until I forget about this enough to reread it. That's that. So let me know if you have read this, if you're going to read it. If you have read this and you can give me an example of any other books that are similar to this, because I need more of this in my life so bad. So yeah, that's it for me. Zip it, Marielle. Enough yapping. Okay, thanks for watching. I love you so much. See you then.